Welcome to the Uncle's channel. Thanks for watching today, and let's continue our journey to finish every single Game Boy Color game. And today focus on a game called Dragon's Lair, the Legend for the original Game Boy. Now the Legend is a really big part here because this is not a traditional Dragon's Lair game. Traditionally, Dragon's Lair, came out in the early 80s, and they continue to port that game over to many systems throughout the years. And it's an iconic status at this point. Now I personally didn't grow up playing it in the arcade, and the only experience I ever have is I remember at a friend's house growing up, he had it on the 3DO, and I watched him play it for a little bit, but I never actually got to play it myself. And before the filming of this video, I actually watched the entire gameplay of the arcade version just so I could catch up on all the characters, all the different animation types, and such as that. And it's a really greatly animated game for the arcade. It's by the filmmaker Don Bluth, who left Disney, created some amazing films like The Land Before Time, American Tail, Five-O Goes West, and so many more out there. But anyway, that's the original Dragon's Lair, and that is a arcade, click point action game essentially. And this here is not going to be that at all. It's a action adventure platformer game, or actually take away the action adventure. It's a platforming game through and through here. Like, you can't actually get hit by any of the enemies. All you do is collect things and jump from platform to platform and try to avoid the spikes. That's essentially the entire game here wrapped up in a nutshell. And that sounds really easy, but this is probably the hardest game that I have played in this entire challenge here. And I would hesitate to say 99% of the players who played it growing up did not finish this game, did not even come remotely close to finishing this game, because it is pretty much of an insane difficulty. But does that mean the game is a horrible game, or does the game still have some pros that can be appreciated by even the sternest and harshest of critics out there? So we're going to find all that out and more as we journey through Dragon's Lair for the original Game Boy. Now, this particular game did get moved up in our queue a good bit because Retro Ed UK requested one of my earlier videos, so naturally moves up in the queue. And if there's a game you would like to see me cover sooner or later, let me know in the comments down below. And just like Dragon's Lair, I'll move it right up in the queue. Now, he also requested the other Dragon's Lair, the Game Boy Color one, and that's coming up in a future video as well. And so we're going to go ahead and knock out the Dragon's Lair fairly close together, so be on the lookout for that in the upcoming week at the same time. Now, I'd like to start the videos off by looking at the box art for the game, and the cover here is pretty much the same as every other Dragon's Lair cover out there. You have Dirk the Daring, the knight here, Daphne the princess beside him, you have Singe the dragon in the background, and you are missing Murdoch the wizard, who's another main character in the franchise. However, if you didn't know any of that, it really doesn't matter because none of these characters are in this particular game at all, except for Dirk the Daring. Truth be told, this game has almost nothing to do with the actual original Dragon's Lair, even though it says right here on the cover, legendary arcade hit. Now, you would think by putting it on there, this is probably the legendary arcade game. And I've already told you it's going to be a platforming game, but there's another little secret behind this game. It's actually not even a Dragon's Lair game at all. It's another game called Roller Coaster that came out for the, let me make sure I get it right here, ZX Spectrum. And all they did was take that game and change out the sprites to be Dirk the Daring and some of the background to be more medieval and whatnot. And that's what makes up this particular Dragon's Lair game. It's not even a Dragon's Lair game. So to put on the cover here, legendary arcade hit, man, they're lying to players, and I think they know that. Now, when you start the game up here, it does have a few options. You can do one player or two player. That'd be alternating. It's not going to be link cable. You can do speed and slow or fast. I did choose fast because that's just simply the default speed that was put on here. And the background music here is actually pretty top notch. And all the music throughout the game is really enjoyable music. It's all sort of a haunting medieval style music. Fits Dragon's Lair, or at least an old castle medieval setting, perfectly. I really enjoy that. The little vines hanging off the castle walls here in the background. Great medieval setting. And so I enjoy the tile screen. I enjoy the music. And even when you start the game up here, I enjoy the way the game itself looks. You have these little mushroom houses in the background. A great little medieval setting going on here. You journey a little bit further. You have these waterfalls coming down. You journey further into the game. You're going to get a little haunting forest you're going to go through, a graveyard, a little ghost. I mean, there's tons of charming little sprites and graphics in this game, and the music throughout, like I said earlier, matches these sprites perfectly. It's almost like a little medieval fairy tale that no one knows about that you're getting ready to journey through. However, the flaws in the game are going to start shining through just about as fast as the medieval charm does when you really get going here. And so you have your character Dirk, and you begin to move left or right. I choose to go left first, and you're going to notice all the sprites that you can climb on in the background, whether it's the trees or the root system or the houses, the ending of the sprites are not very clear here. So it's difficult to tell what can Dirk actually jump on, what can he jump through, what's he going to fall through, things like that. And the worst part about this is when you actually do fall through something, there is fall damage in the game. So if you fall all the way down, your character just simply dies, and that's going to get old really fast because you only get 10 lives in this game. Now, there are no enemies to attack, like I mentioned earlier, but there are plenty of spikes that you can fall on, and there are plenty of fall distances you're going to fall on while you're trying to get all these platforming literally frame perfect in so many of these areas. Now I did choose to go left first, and I journeyed probably about 15 screens left, and then went down and went off to the right a little bit. And I was dying pretty much like crazy here because I was sort of going at it sort of haphazardly, and I didn't realize you only had 10 lives. After 10 lives, you do pass away. And I started wondering, like, what exactly is the goal of this game? Because you can go left or right from the start. And so I just simply looked it up. And the goal of the game is to capture every single life stone in the game. And once you capture all of the life stones, at that point you have essentially beaten the game. And the story behind it is Daphne was being captured by Murdoch, I think, and she was able to shatter the life stone and basically divide in so many pieces, and Dirk is required to collect all of those in order to take out Murdoch. Now I think that's the story is in the manual. It's going to vary off a little bit in the game, but that's at least the reason we are collecting the life stones as we go. Now I've already established like the game is really difficult here. The platform is pretty much frame perfect, so I'm sort of just going to go through the highlights of the game here as far as like the majority of the screens that I journey through, different creatures I'm going to come across, different particular puzzles, and just really the oddities of the game in general. Now on the first screen here, when you come across it, you're going to notice that there are no enemies that can harm you, and there's even a giant rhino at the top, and you think the rhino can hurt you, but no, you can actually ride the rhino back and forth. And so the game does have its charm, I'm not going to lie. Like having a game in a medieval setting where I can climb up a waterfall and then ride on a rhino here, I like that. And then you journey to the next screen. You're actually climbing on all these roots of the trees that are coming down from the top of the overworld. I like that. I like the idea that you're climbing through the roots. Like I said, like the environment in the game here is pretty much top tier. And if the difficulty was toned down a little bit, I feel like I'd probably like this game quite a bit. And then you journey down from there, and you have the little pterodactyls, and you hop on the pterodactyls. You can fly around the pterodactyls, collect the life stones. If you fall down, there are some spikes on this screen, but there's different types of spikes in the game. And the spikes are more like spaced out like this. You can actually land on the spikes and hop on them. And as long as you keep hopping, you actually won't die. And I think there's actually like a flaw in the game because there's no rhyme or reason why they would give you a break on this particular obstacle. And then you continue on here. You get to ride on like the back of a little rabbit across some spikes here. You get to hop on some bees. There's some butterflies coming up. I mean, the game is wild as far as like the sprites here. Now, is any of this in the actual Dragon's Lair game? Of course not. This is not in that game at all, but it's still a enjoyable atmosphere that they're creating. And then you come across the part that's probably pulled most from the original roller coaster game, and you come across this little mine cart here. Now, obviously, the mine cart is meant to be a roller coaster, but in our game here, it's a mine cart. We hop on it, and as you're journeying on the mine cart, you have to hop up and actually collect the little life stones as you go. And this here is incredibly difficult until you actually learn the mechanics here. The best strategy that I came across was basically stand at the very far front of the minecart, and as the minecart is going, jump forward with the minecart, and when you land, go ahead and take another couple steps forward inside the minecart and get ready to jump while pushing forward again to collect the next one. If you just simply stand in the middle of the minecart and jump up and or jump forward and try to grab the item, you will end up falling off your little minecart and you will lose a life. And it is really frustrating. Like I got to the point for a while before I figured out the mechanics here or the best strategy. I was actually trying to go back to the beginning and just simply walk across the track, but the game is too smart for that. It actually put like a little skull here to let you know if you try to move on the tracks past the point, you will die automatically anyway. And so the minecart, incredibly frustrating, and you're going to get to a lot of minecarts as you go. However, if you follow that strategy, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier. Now, the next puzzle you're going to come across here is like a little sky lift at the top of the screen. Journey back left to right. I hop up there, hop in the sky lift. I think I'm about to collect another life stone, and then I just sort of die out of nowhere. And I'm like, well, what the heck happened? And it turns out these are not life stones. These are little electrical shocks that will kill you at the top of the screen. So if the game wasn't frustrating enough already, they actually put like, I guess, fake life stones in there to a degree. Randomly, and that's going to obviously throw you off. And looking at like, if you're playing on the original Game Boy, sort of blurry graphics a little bit, man, these are so small, you can't tell the difference in these. And I guarantee you almost every player fell for this, ended up trying to collect a life stone and lost a life on his little sky lift here. But that's nowhere near as frustrating when you go to the next screen. There's this giant tree off to the side, and you're like, all right, probably an important checkpoint. Absolutely not. It is a dead end in the game, and once you get to that point, you have to turn around and journey all the way back to the beginning in order to go right from the original start screen. And this is the only instance in the game where there are two paths or split paths in the game. And it's like, why do they do this? It's just simply an annoying factor to have to journey back through all the areas that you've already collected, all of these little life stones. There's no purpose except to hopefully make you die more to get back to the original part of the game. And when you get to the original part of the game, you journey off to the right here, and the setting changes 100%. Like, has nothing to do with the medieval setting anymore. Now you're journeying through like ancient Egypt. There's a giant sphinx up at the top. You're journeying through what look like pyramids here. It makes literally no sense at all, at least for the Dragon's Lair storyline. But you're journeying off here to the right. You come across a minecart pretty darn fast, and this minecart is a heck of a lot easier, not just simply because we know the mechanics better or the strategy better, but just simply because it's a little bit more or less platformy as you go as far as like collecting these different life stones. Pretty easy. When you get off the minecart though, then you come across an area that's like one of the most bizarre areas like I can imagine in the game. You come across it, and there's a witch's hat sort of floating around here, and you're like, all right, that's odd enough on its own. You hop on the witch's hat, collect a few more life stones, like a little rotating wheel in the middle, and then you jump off to the right, and there's a Egyptian obelisk right there, and there's tornadoes on each side of the obelisk, and you're like, what the heck are the game designers thinking here? Like, the first part, pretty consistent. You know, everything sort of matched up with like a medieval fantasy world. And now you're just journeying into ancient Egypt mixed with medieval fantasy, mixed with like tornadoes and such. I don't know. This is, I feel like they almost went to like a machine on their computer and just typed in like gaming sprites and just sort of start clicking and dragging stuff into this portion of the game. It really just doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. And eventually we journey into what I assume is the pyramid area inside the game. And once we get in here, there are tons of little spike puzzles or like rolling pins that you're going to go through. But there's one area in particular I found particularly frustrating. And there's these little hills that would go down, a little bed of spikes, another little hill, bed of spikes, and another little hill. And you basically have to get on the edge of the hill. It'll automatically start throwing you down toward the bed of spikes. And if you jump too early, you would land in the spikes. If you jump too late, you would just simply hit the spikes. And you have to jump at literally the last possible frame in order to jump over the spikes, grab the life stone, and then journey down another hill with the exact same mechanics in order to avoid the spikes. And this is just simply difficult for one hill. They make you do it 3 times back to back in order to successfully get through the area. I'm telling you, like, the game purposely set up as many traps as possible. And it was around this part like I finally realized what this game reminds me of more than any other like genre out there. And it's the genre game that I thought was created with the game Super Meat Boy. And if you ever played that game, it's an incredibly difficult platformer that has just tons and tons of areas for you to die in. There are no weapons inside that game for Meat Boy to get. You just simply have to platform it literally perfectly and avoid spikes and saws and things like that. And what are you doing in this game? You have no weapons and you're avoiding the little spikes, no saws, but you are avoiding anything to die. And so I really think like this game was an inspiration for games like Super Meat Boy. I could be wrong, but at least that's what it's reminded me a great deal of. And I feel like Super Meat Boy is a much easier game than this game because it allows you to have unlimited continues. But you work your way on through the pyramid, and you eventually come to one part that I think is a mandatory death in the game because I cannot figure out how to get this life stone and continue on the pathway. And there's this giant platform that comes down, and it just goes all the way up to the ceiling. And when it hits the ceiling, you automatically fall off of it. And if you fall to the ground, you'll die from fall damage. If you fall to the left, you'll hit the spikes. You'll die that way. And you have to get a life stone and get up to the center of it. And at that point, you can hop up and down this little bitty crevice here, and you can journey on left and continue your way on down the little platform. And I could not figure out for the life of me how to collect a life stone and get all the way to the little crevice there all in one go. And I ended up collecting a life stone dying because once you die, you keep the life stones that you collected. And then, do a second go and get up to the little crevice. I have no way or no knowledge of any way you could possibly solve this puzzle. I even went to the internet and looked at the long plays to see if like anyone else had figured it out, and no one, at least from my view in any way, has figured out how to get the life stone and get to the crevice all in one move in order not to die. So I think there's like a mandatory death in the game, and that really sucks, like when a game creates a spot where you have to die. And that pretty much destroys the entire community out there that might want to try to do a zero death run through this particular game, because I'm sure that is a very, very popular and thriving community or a zero death run or speed run through Dragon's Lair on the original Game Boy here. But regardless, it does bother me that the game has a mandatory death, at least from what I can tell. If you know better, please let me know in the comments down below. And then we journey off and we find another minecart here. And this part, you actually journey through an area that's mostly miners. And it like makes complete sense. You're on a minecart, you're journeying through a mine, there's little miners up top, collecting stones, pushing in their little minecarts. This will make complete sense, at least graphically and environmental wise. Why they're doing that inside of a pyramid, I don't know. But regardless, at least made sense as far as like what a minecart is. And then the next area or world that you're going to come across here is going to be like a haunted area or like a Halloween type area, because you're going to journey through like a cemetery, then you're going to journey through like a haunted woods area, then you're going to journey through like the river Styx or like a river of death or lake of death. You're going to journey through here. And so a very haunted or Halloween-y type area you're going to go through. And it starts off here in the cemetery like with some really old school looking ghosts. Like these ghosts look like they're from like, I don't know, like the 1800s or something. Like these are old school looking ghosts. Like I've not seen this particular ghost sprite in like any game ever. All ghost sprites pretty much look pretty similar. This one here is a very unique design. I don't know where they got it from exactly, but it's unique. You continue on here. You get to an area where you're journeying around on platforms here of a giant like statue in the middle. It reminds me so much of like the movie Prometheus, which is like a prequel to the Alien movies, and a really great image, a really great lore possibly behind it. I mean, you would assume something like this has great lore behind it. No clue what it is, but it's cool looking. And if you fall down here, it's like infuriating to the max because it actually takes you back to the very beginning of the game. And it's like you die every time you fall into a hole in this game up until this point, and you fall in this hole, and it's like even more punishment than just simply dying, because then you have to go all the way back to the very beginning of the game and start the entire thing over. And that is incredibly infuriating. And then we get to the Crypt Swamp, and the Crypt Swamp has a very stern message for us. It says, "Do not follow the path up ahead, lest you wish to end up dead." A nice little rhyme there before you fall to your death. But in this area, you have the most amazing looking Halloween or haunting trees that I've seen in the game, at least in a long time. And there's actually different expressions on different trees in the background and whatnot. And the game really like has like an old school feel to it as far as like the medieval setting of like the 70s almost, or 1970s, what they depicted as medieval setting, and like a 1970s depiction of like a haunting here, of the trees and whatnot, and like the graveyards and even like some of the ghosts and such. It just has like an old school feel in an already old school game, if that makes any sense at all. Like it doesn't feel like it was up to date with the times of the early 90s. It still felt like it was like already 20 years behind in the sprites that they're putting out, which I personally love, but I could see like some kids in the 90s, if they even got to this point, would have been pretty darn disappointed. And then the next part here is like a giant marble or boulder you have to hop on and ride this through, collect all these life stones. And this may be the only part in the game that actually pulls something from the Dragon Layers game on the arcade. Because wasn't there a part in that, at least from my watching of it, that had like a giant marble or a giant boulder that was coming after Dirk at one point? I think this might be a reference to that, but it's probably not. It just simply happened to line up two sprites that were similar. But regardless, it could be a reference to the actual game. Then we get to ride across the Lake of Death here, a really cool little depiction, which also might have been in the arcade game. This area here might be the most reference to it that I can think of. But I think there was like sort of a bubbly green swamp inside the arcade game as well. But after this part, we do come across where we get to ride like a giant bird or a phoenix. And we ride it across the castle here, right across the mountains, collecting life stones as we go. And then we get to the end and I collect what I think is the last life stone inside the game. And once I collect it, nothing happens. So I'm like, all right, well, did I miss one? I was like, am I going to have to backtrack through the entire game and find the one life stone that I missed? Because some of them were hidden. There was one like it was hidden behind like a shield, and I didn't see it my first time going through. It was actually like when the minecart came back, I found it then. And so I was like, maybe there's one that I missed. And I was like getting pretty frustrated. I was like, well, I'll go ahead and explore up here toward the top here. And once I got to the top, evidently when you explore the top part, that is where you were supposed to go after you collect all of the life stones. And you can awaken the, let me see what it said exactly, the dormant knight who's going to help you fight this battle. And together you can possibly face Murdoch's power. And I'm like, wait a second. So like you were journeying to get the life stones to awaken this knight. And I was like, nowhere does this make any sense. I don't believe that was in the manual at all. And it's like, so I don't know, like the story just simply didn't come together at all. I thought we were like pulling the life stone back together so I could be the hero, not awaken someone else to be the hero inside the game. But regardless, we have at least at this point finished the game. We've beaten the game. And I have to say, as an overall, this game here is probably not worth playing through for the majority of players out there. I cannot imagine finishing this game without a Game Genie or save stage or some help to journey your way through it, because you only get 10 lives and you die all the time in this game, because your jumps, like I said, have to be literally sprite perfect, and you don't get extra lives. You get 10 to start, and you journey through about a 30 to 40 minute game here if you did it like literally perfectly, and you expect not to die less than 10 times on a game that is like set up full of traps, full of frame perfect jumps, full of just all these unfair deaths, there's like fall damage such as that, and I cannot imagine hardly anyone finishing this game without at least some help on their side. And I actually read online there's actually like different regional differences in this game, and I know like some regions take away like the fall damage, some regions give like extra lives. Now the US version, which is what I was playing, they don't have that. They have not taken away fall damage. You did not get extra lives. This would be like the hardest version of the game, but there are some modifications on some of the other regions across the world. But the hardest version of the game, difficult to the point where almost no one could finish the game. But even if you could finish the game, like, is it polished at least as far as the platforming goes? And I would even argue no, that it's not even polished for the majority of it, because like I said, sometimes you can't really tell like exactly where the sprites end and where they begin for where your character can stand on, or what you can and can't jump through, such as that, and that gets really frustrating. Also, the game is not polished as far as like which spikes are going to kill you, which ones are not going to kill you. It's a spike. All spikes should kill you in the game. None of them should give you this intermediate damage. If I'm going to fall, you know, like 5 feet in the air, it's going to kill me, I shouldn't be able to land on spikes and continue on my journey as long as I hopped fast enough. And I really shouldn't complain about it, because it's like one of the only times the game actually gave you a break at some point from its insane difficulty here. But still, like, it just simply wasn't a very polished game in a lot of those particular areas. Now also, the game didn't make any sense as far as like story-wise goes, and I don't necessarily need like a great story, but like it just simply didn't follow the Dragon's Lair franchise in any form or fashion, and it felt like they just simply took the old roller coaster game, stuck some different sprites in here, and gave it the title of Dragon Lair in order to try to cash in on the particular franchise. And that's a shame, because I mean, I know the franchise is a really rich franchise and they could have done a heck of a lot better for it, and we'll see if they do better for the Game Boy Color version, which I do believe is a faithful remake of the actual arcade classic. But like I said, the game is not just simply a disaster from start to finish. There are aspects I really like in the game. The sprites in the game, like the environment they crafted, especially for like the first part of the game, like the medieval setting and like the haunting setting, fantastic. I loved it. Excellent. Throughout the entire bit there. I enjoyed everything I saw as far as environment wise. The pyramid level was fine. It was whatever, nothing nothing to write home about. Wasn't great, wasn't terrible, but the other two areas in the game, fantastic, and I really like that giant statue and love to know more about why that giant statue is there. Is it something like Prometheus? That's what I'm going to at least go on in my mind. And also, like I said, the music in the game is top tier. And so if I was going to give it a rating on a scale of 1 to 10, there are enough good things about it. I can't completely bomb it, but I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 10. Most people should not play this game, but if you did want to load up the music or the soundtrack, or just simply like watch a long play of it to see the sprites, it might be worth your time to do that. But probably actually buying the game, trying to journey through it, I'd say it's a no-go. But if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos listed up above, and go out there, find a great game to play. Simply have a great rest of the day.